Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen declares war on my parents for cutting a tree down on their own property. After that, am I the jerk for wanting to start a relationship with my newly found daughter? And after that, entitled mom wants me to be free full-time childcare to her kids because I am at home, working. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets kicked off of Facebook. But where will I go? So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen declares war on my parents for cutting a tree down on their own property. I, 25 male, have been living away from home ever since graduating from college. My parents both retired recently, and last summer they decided to use some of the money they had saved up to finally build their dream retirement home in New Orleans, where they've been living for the past 10 years. I come from a very tight-knit family, so I still talk to my parents every week, and they were so excited when they said they had already picked out the location where they wanted the house built. It was an empty lot in a nice neighborhood where a house had been demolished not long before due to age, and the previous owner, who was pretty wealthy and owned numerous properties around the city, decided that the lot was worth more without the house on it. Anyway, my parents snapped it up as soon as it came on the market. But not long after construction began, they realized that they were building their dream house right next door to a lair of a wild Karen. The trouble started when my parents had to cut down a large oak tree that sat in the front of the lot. It was a real beauty too, one of those big southern live oaks, and although they didn't want to, they knew they had to remove it because it was in the way. No one likes to cut down a big beautiful tree, and believe me, if there was a way to avoid doing it without impeding the construction, my parents would have taken it. So they called a tree removal service, and the tree was soon gone. Well, a few days after the tree had been cut down, my dad was on the property talking to some of the construction guys and making sure that everything was going smoothly. He was going back to his car when he saw a woman in her late 50s walk out of the house next door and head to her mailbox. My dad, let's call him John, is a pretty chill and laid-back guy who likes to be on good terms with everyone. So he walked over and introduced himself. "Hi," he said, holding out his hand. "My name's John, and my wife and I are going to be your neighbors once our house is finished. I just wanted to come over and say hi and introduce myself. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?" Karen glanced at the extended hand, then looked up at my dad and glared at him. "My name is none of your business," she snapped. "I'm not going to shake your hand because of lockdown. And even if there was no lockdown, I still wouldn't shake your hand because you people ruined my life when you cut down my tree. I still can't believe how selfish you are. You should both be ashamed of yourselves." My dad was taken aback by this and pointed out that Karen already had a nice big oak tree in her backyard, but Karen ignored him and stalked back inside her house. She never explained why she thought she was the owner of the tree that had been cut down, not once. And whenever my parents asked about it, she refused to answer. I guess it's just one of those things we'll never know, like what really happened to the lost Roanoke colony or the fate of D.B. Cooper. My parents met some of their other neighbors later that day, including a nice elderly couple who lived in the other house next door to Karen. And when my dad told them what happened, the neighbors said Karen was like that to everyone, and no one in the neighborhood liked her. They also said that Karen had been nasty to them for a long time, and they were in the process of selling their house because they couldn't stand living next to her anymore. Karen soon began living up to her reputation. For months, whenever my parents would visit the house to see how the construction was coming along, she'd find something to complain or confront them about. One time, she said the construction workers were being too loud and threatened to call the police, even though it was the middle of the day. Another time, she said the construction company was using illegal immigrants as cheap labor and threatened to report them and have the whole project shut down. My dad mentioned this to the owner of the company, and the owner sent Karen a formal letter threatening a lawsuit if she tried. I don't know if there were any actual grounds for a lawsuit, but the threat must have worked because the authorities never showed up. Oh, and then there was the time she tried to have my parents' car towed for illegal parking when they parked by the curb of their still unfinished house. The first time my parents knew about this was when the tow truck showed up, but the driver took one look at where my parents' car was parked and told Karen he'd send her a bill for wasting his time if she called him again. I could go on. Karen did everything she could think of to try and interfere. She was absolutely relentless in her crusade to avenge a tree she never even owned. Happily, the house was completed despite her best efforts, and my parents finally moved in not long after the holidays. My mom told me later that she caught Karen watching them bitterly from her window as they were taking some of their boxes inside. She was concerned that Karen might keep going and try something else, but I guess Karen was too busy wallowing in self-pity over her failure or something, because things were actually quiet for a while. But a few weeks ago, things changed. New Orleans has had some really bad weather lately due to the winter storms that are battering much of the southern US right now. And one night, one of those storms was so powerful that it knocked over the tree in Karen's backyard. It missed falling onto her house, but it didn't miss falling onto her shiny new Jaguar and crushing it like a beer can. According to my folks, Karen didn't discover what happened until the following morning. When she came outside and saw the pile of scrap metal that used to be her car, she threw back her head and let out a primal scream like something out of The Exorcist. She had to pay a tree removal service to get rid of the tree, and then she had to pay for a tow truck to get rid of the car too. And then she had a rental car too. Karen put her property up for sale and moved out not long afterward. Everyone in the neighborhood was glad to see her go, and my parents enjoyed watching her drive off into the sunset from the front porch of their amazing new house. Have you ever had a neighbor that you just couldn't stand? If so, what was wrong with them? Please tell us about it in the comments. Has anyone ever not had a horrible neighbor? Am I the jerk for wanting to start a relationship with my newly found daughter? Back when I, 51 male, was 16, I met a girl, Anne, in my school, who was new and immigrated to the States. She was absolutely gorgeous and had a very distinctive look. We dated for 5 years, and I had always considered her the love of my life. We went to the same college together and always talked about getting married. Her family wasn't very keen on a white kid like me dating her. One day, she asked me to meet her at a local park and tells me she has to skip town. I asked why and when I would see her. She acted like she couldn't talk long and just said she didn't know, but she was doing this for my safety. That was the last time I saw her. I moved on eventually, but I always thought of her. When Facebook became a thing, I tried to find her, but never did. Eventually, I got married to my wife, 50 female, when we were in our early 40s. She already had 2 kids from a previous marriage who were both preteens at the time. I've provided for them, but they were never warm to me. I don't really begrudge them for that, but I never felt appreciated with everything I sacrificed to provide. They are in their early 20s now. Fast forward to 6 months ago. A new girl, Beth, started at our office, and when I saw her, I was shocked. She was the spitting image of Anne. When I got the chance to talk to her privately, I asked if her mom's name was Anne. She said she honestly didn't know because she was adopted, but she had been hunting for her biological parents for years. She only had one photo to reference. I asked if I could see it. She said she would bring it the next day. I kept this from my wife. I didn't want to say anything if I didn't 100% know, and she's the jealous type and never liked hearing about Anne. The next day, Beth brought the photo, and it was Anne. I told her my story. We both came to the realization that she was old enough to potentially be my daughter. We planned to get a paternity test that week. I was hesitant to tell my wife because I suspected she would forbid it. Well, she's my daughter. 29 years later, and I have a daughter. We were both overjoyed to have found one another, and she asked if we could start building a relationship. I came home that day and told my wife everything. She was livid, but not because I was keeping this from her, like what I thought she would be understandably upset over. My wife thinks I'd choose Anne and Beth over her. She doesn't want me to be in contact with a girl who isn't your child as much as our kids are to you. She feels that by building this relationship, I will see her kids as less of mine. I got mad and told her that her kids are her kids, and I've been happily providing for them. But I am not their father. I am their stepfather, and sometimes I don't even feel they think that. She is forbidding me from this relationship, but I'm ready to die on this hill. Update 1. I want to add that this all came to a head, and now she's seriously using the "it's her or me" ultimatum. Prior to this, we had a happy marriage. She doesn't work, and I provided for the family our whole time together. She has been in hysterics over this, saying Beth just wants to get money out of me. I'm starting to rethink our whole relationship, but I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable by saying I'm absolutely going to make an effort to be in Beth's life from now on as her father. I realized I didn't specify a timeline. Beth started 6-ish months ago, but I hadn't talked to her because of lockdown and whatnot, and truly didn't even really bother looking into her email. It was only until last month, when our offices started to open up, that we got to be in the same physical space, and I saw her in person for me to ask her about her mom. My wife has been livid and unbearable to live with these past couple of weeks. I've tried to talk to her, but she keeps telling me she needs more time. I realize we need a therapist, but her ultimatums are bothering me. Update 2. Wow, I'm blown away by the support and advice I'm receiving. I'm not sure what these award things are, but thank you for the hugs. I just wanted to clear up a few things since I've commented along the way and some people make posts without reading some background. My wife did used to work when I met her. She stopped 5 years ago, but hasn't worked since, and I wish I had an explanation for why, or why I hadn't brought up how that bothered me, but it is what it is. I didn't let her know it bugged me. I just didn't want to pressure her. Despite this, she has always been great at housekeeping and does do legwork with errands. Beth has lived in the same city area as myself her whole life. I have lived here my whole life for the most part. We work in a large company downtown. While it is bizarre she got a job in my department, it happened. I don't doubt we would have eventually found each other, seminars, networking events, etc., especially given we are in the same career field. When I say she's the spitting image, I mean she looks exactly like her mom. The only thing she inherited from me seems to be her interest in the legal field. Finally, everyone keeps commenting on how she just is insecure over my long-lost love obsession. I need to be clear. The only reason I brought Anne up was because she's relevant to the story. Early on in my wife and I's relationship, we discussed past relationships and relationship trauma. We commiserated together about what that did for us mentally/emotionally. After a few snarky comments from her about Anne, I said we wouldn't talk about it anymore, and we hadn't for years. I love my wife, but maybe the veil is lifting for me, and I'm realizing that despite her loving me, she might see me more as just financial support. I don't like thinking that because we had amazing times together, and to think that it might have been a facade hurts. Well, who do you agree with? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I really can't wait to read what our audience thinks about this story. Entitled Mom wants me to be free full-time childcare to her kids because I'm at home, working. So, I'm a stay-at-home mom to my 1-year-old. While staying at home, I run the account side of my partner's business. Invoicing, procurement, bookkeeping, etc. Not masses of work, but when the phone rings, I answer it kind of stuff. Partner would be the first to admit he's useless at this. A girl I met whilst pregnant who had her son roughly the same time as my youngest has just gone back to work after having 2 kids. We got pretty close during pregnancy. She's a bit younger than me, but she was helpful because she's been through it before. Father of the kids left her a few months back, and he works full-time. Her mother was supposed to have her son and their 3-year-old daughter from 10 to 2 every day. However, that's all fallen through, and her mom didn't actually quit her job as promised. WhatsApp conversation as follows. Entitled Mom. My mom's not going to be watching the kids anymore when I go back to work. Me. Oh no, that's awful. What are you going to do? Have you looked at nurseries? We can't afford a nursery for 2 kids. I might as well not go to work for what it costs. Me. I know childcare is ridiculously expensive. Might have more luck with a childminder. Entitled Mom. Any chance you could watch them for a few hours? Me. I don't mind helping out now and then if something comes up, but I can't do it every day. What? But you said you'd always help if we needed. Yeah, I meant if your mom was sick or busy, not every day. It's only a few hours. They won't be too much trouble. They will keep your kid occupied. Me. It's hard enough looking after my own and working. I really can't manage 3. But you don't work. I do spend a few hours a day keeping things running for my partner. Oh, right, that. I don't really see the problem. Why can't you watch them? It's only for a few hours. It's 4 hours. It also means I can't go anywhere because I can't fit 3 car seats in my car. Well, the only way I can work is if we have 3 childcare, so someone's going to have to watch them for me. She did the stupid shruggy arms emoji here too. Me. I'm sorry, but I really can't do it. It wouldn't work. I really think you're being unfair here. You're not doing anything all day, and you won't even look after my kids for a few hours? Me. It's not fair of you to expect me to watch your 2 kids, as well as my own, unpaid, 5 days a week, whilst I also have to do all the admin for the business. Can't you just pay someone to do that? Me. Why should we pay someone to do something I'm currently doing at 0 cost to us, so that I can watch your kids for free? Because I need your help. Funny how you can watch your own child but not mine. Me. Looking after one kid is a lot different than 3. I think you're just being difficult because you don't want to help me. Etc., etc. Conversation ended. Didn't speak to her, but saw a passive-aggressive Facebook status about fake friends / people who let you down. Moron. Yeah, Karen knows a lot about fake friends, doesn't she? Considering the fact that she is one. Never let a Karen pressure you into doing things you don't want to do. How dare I build a treehouse in my own yard? Cast. We've got me. We've got my niece, who's 7. We've got entitled Karen, and we've got entitled kid. Story. So, I like to consider myself a pretty handy person. I can build stuff really well. Because niece is back in school full-time and my sister works, niece comes over to my house for a couple of hours after school. Lately, she had been talking about wanting a treehouse and how she's really sad she can't have one at her house. They live in an apartment, no backyards. I told her that I had 2 very nice trees in my backyard that we could use. You should have seen her face light up. It was like Christmas for her. I had a bunch of old sliding closet doors from a few years ago when I did some renovations, so I decided to use those for my wood. Recycling, am I right? By the end of the first day, we have a very nice floor and rope ladder up. The second day, right after school, niece is helping me saw some wood planks for a ladder up to the crow's nest when we hear it. Karen. Ahem. Me. Can we help you? I should point out, me and my neighbors share a fence, the tall kind. You can't see through it unless you are smushing your face up against it. Karen. You can't have that. Me. I'm sorry? You cannot have a fort. Me. Ah, and who are you? I'm Karen, your neighbor's friend. Me. Nice to meet you. Are you new in the neighborhood? No, just chatting with your neighbor. I live on the other side of town. Me. Okay. Is there a particular reason we can't have our treehouse? Yes. If my son, entitled kid, sees it, he'll want one too. I'm speechless. Entitled mom's speechless too. Me. So let me get this straight. We can't have our fort because if your son sees it, he'll want one? Yes. When you don't even live here? Yes. Me. All right, niece. Why don't you go grab the paint cans in the garage? Niece and I continue with our work, me sawing, niece painting her wood. About 15 minutes later, we hear an ungodly shriek. Entitled kid. Mine! This kid can't be older than 8, but he's trying to climb over our fence. I want a tree house. Karen then drags him by the arm to her car, shooting me death glares the whole time. I'm not sure how to feel about this. I've never seen this woman before, and I haven't seen her since. So, yeah. Am I the jerk for telling my mother-in-law that her rules for letting us stay in her house are ridiculous? We had a severe plumbing issue occur at our house recently. Insurance will cover it, but the house is virtually uninhabitable until that happens. Our second-story bathtub is currently hanging halfway into the kitchen. My husband's mom graciously extended an invitation for he and I and our 2 kids to sleep over at her house for a week or 2 while repairs are being done. We accepted, and upon arrival, everything was fine. We have had a rocky past, but at this point, his mother and I are usually pretty cordial. After dinner, we went to put our kids to bed in the pull-out couch in their TV room. She stopped us and said, "If you do that, where will you 2 be sleeping?" And my husband looked at her confused. "In the guest suite?" She looked completely shocked. "Under my roof? Absolutely not. You," talking to my husband, "can have the guest suite, but she sleeps elsewhere." My husband sort of laughed in amazement and said, "You're going to make my wife sleep in the living room when there's a perfectly good queen-size bed for us both?" His mom all but shuddered. She said, "Oh my God, why are you even making me think about this? I don't want to think about you in bed with her." I've been married 8 years. At this point, I just started to smother a smile. I seriously could not help it. Her face had gone red as a tomato, and she looked so genuinely gobsmacked. She turned to me and snapped, "What's funny here?" I replied, "I'm sorry." She asked again, "What's funny? What's so funny to you? Do you have to act like a child about everything?" So I responded, "This is all just a little ridiculous." She stormed out of the room and went upstairs. She pretty much slammed her bedroom door behind her. That night, my husband gave me the guest suite, and he slept on the pull-out sofa. We left and went to my parents' house the next day, where they had no issue allowing us to share a room. His mother has requested an apology from both of us for disrespecting her home. but my husband hasn't responded to that text, and honestly, we don't even know how. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mother-in-law? Please let us know. Oh God, what is it with mother-in-laws? Small business owners are not afraid to yell back at you if you swear at their servers. For context, I work this job during winter and summer breaks between semesters. This happened a few months ago, probably in December. DoorDash driver comes in and I tell him it's going to be about 10 more minutes before his order is ready. That's fine. He sits down at the bar on his phone for a few minutes. Now at this point, we're pretty swamped and I'm the only server for tables, phones, to-go orders, etc. This means every mistake that wasn't from the kitchen was mine. In my hectic state, I made a mistake and gave his order to the other DoorDash driver who was waiting. I realized about a minute after she walked out the door with it, and of course, I had to do the walk of shame to the bar to tell this guy I messed up, and he would have to wait another 15 minutes or so. We would bump his order to the top of the queue. This guy wasted no time in standing up and pointing his finger right at me, telling me he's been waiting for 10 whole minutes. Boo-hoo, and I should have told him. I don't know what he expected me to do, because I literally told him as soon as I realized. He starts to raise his voice. Other customers are looking over, and I'm sure I look pretty stressed because I'm sweating from running around the restaurant, and I get anxious when people are mad at me. Due to the small size of the restaurant, my manager, who has worked with the owner of this restaurant for years, comes out of the kitchen with a no BS look on her face. She was working the grill. Let me just say that I both fear and admire this woman for her tenacity. What's the problem here, sir? She looks like she already knows some BS is about to come out of his mouth. The man angrily gestures with his hands while telling her that this girl, me, messed up his order and he's been waiting forever, blah blah blah, and then he swears at her. Big mistake. This 5'1" woman is probably tougher than anyone he's ever met. She swore right back at him. She already apologized to you. What more do you want? He tries talking over her and raises his voice again, at which point she motions to the door. All right, sir, have a good day. This ticked him off, but she just kept repeating it as he yells at her. You can leave now, sir. We don't want you in here. Just leave. Have a good day. She keeps telling him to have a good day, and he finally storms out. I never saw him again, but it felt so good to have the manager stand up for me like that. Lots of perks working at a local business. No one can report you to corporate, so the manager and owner can tell anyone to buzz off if they're jerks. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great? If you insist. This was over 15 years ago when digital SLRs were first becoming somewhat affordable to anyone who wasn't either wealthy or a professional photographer. When I was in high school, I had been a budding photographer for years already and was working in a small retail photo supply shop. I had a customer who appeared to be in his early 60s come in one Saturday and spend over an hour demoing just about every camera we sold. I honestly looked forward to those customers because it made the time go faster and I generally enjoyed talking shop with people. Eventually, he settled on one that we both thought would suit his needs and I rang him up. A few nights later, he comes back. I've already been given a heads up by the store's owner that this guy had called ahead and he is angry. When the customer arrives, he immediately accuses me of selling him a camera that's either broken or simply not good enough for what he wants to use it for, taking pictures of his grandkids, who, like most kids, are not always sitting perfectly still. It's too slow. It takes the pictures after the kid's already done something. Every photo is blurry, etc. I take him at his word. I have no reason not to, and examine the camera, changing some settings and snapping a few pictures as I go. I genuinely cannot find anything wrong with it at all. As gently as I can, I try to tell him that it may be a combination of using the wrong settings on the camera for what he's trying to photograph, while teaching him the right ones, and maybe a bit of slow reflexes that will develop with practice. Keep in mind that I'm young and terrified of losing my job, so believe me when I say I'm as delicate as I can be with the whole situation. But that was the wrong answer. Apparently, his solution, okay, hotshot, let's see you make it work. I'm going to wave my arms back and forth over my head, and I want you to take pictures when they're straight up. He insists this will prove that the camera is too slow and can't take a sharp picture. He hands me the camera and starts doing his best wave your hands in the air like you just don't care right in the store. Snap, snap, snap. I hand the camera back and let him review the photos, each one showing the exact moment he wanted me to photograph, perfectly sharp and in focus. He didn't say another word. He huffed, hastily shoved everything back into his camera bag and stormed off. Sorry, sir. Just doing what you asked me to. Pretended to be an employee to shut Karen down. It worked. And pick up a date. Failed. So this happened years ago, but it still makes me smile, so maybe it will make someone else out there smile. One day I walked into my local department store and immediately could hear the insane squawking of an active Karen in the wild. An older woman was in the aisle in my path yelling at an employee who looked like he might be a manager. He was. She was pointing to another man who was quite obviously not an employee, demanding that he be fired. Me, early 20s, female. We've got the shocked manager, we've got the bewildered customer, and the screeching Karen. Karen was pointing her talon-like fingers at the customer, demanding that manager fire him for being rude to her and not helping her. Anytime manager tries to say something, Karen just interrupted and kept berating them both, insisting that customer worked there and demanding he be fired. Now, I've never been accused of being shy. After hearing this exchange for a hot minute, I decided I couldn't resist the impulse to get involved. Plus, they were partially blocking my path. I stepped in between manager and customer, looking at customer and said, "Okay, you're fired. Now get your shopping cart, finish shopping, pay for your items, and get out." At the same time, I had taken him gently by the arm and led him a few feet away from Karen's circle of influence. All three of them got quiet. Nobody knew what to do or say. After a brief pause, customer said to me quietly, I don't work here." I smiled and said softly, "Neither do I." After another brief pause, we both started laughing. Karen was no longer screeching and manager was just standing there, wondering what the heck was going on. Then I asked customer if he was single. He wasn't, but I always thought that would have been a funny story to tell people if we had hooked up. And that was it. Karen shot me an angry look, but apparently she finally figured it out and skulked off. Not apologizing, of course. And the rest of us, plus a few other customers and employees that had been attracted by the wild Karen's shrill howling, went back to whatever we were doing before. One of them gave me a grin and a discreet thumbs up. Entitled woman demands to be checked out during 2-minute silence. This story takes place on Remembrance Day in the UK several years ago. For those who may not be familiar, Remembrance Day is a nationally observed Memorial Day that takes place on the 11th of November each year, and a big part of the memorial is a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. On this particular Remembrance Day, I was working as a shop assistant. At about 10:55, an announcement was made saying that at 11 a.m. the tills would close for 2 minutes so staff could take part in the silence. When 11 a.m. came, I was stood near the till being operated by a new member of staff who I'll call Elliot. Elliot was 17, very sweet, shy, and non-confrontational, and he had only been working there for a few days at this point. He was about to start serving a customer who we will call Entitled Woman when the announcement came on and the background music stopped playing, marking the beginning of the 2-minute silence. Elliot stopped what he was doing and lowered his head slightly. A lot of people do this, almost like tipping an invisible hat to someone, as did almost everyone else in the vicinity, staff and customers alike, except Entitled Woman. The following conversation is a paraphrase of what was said, as this was several years ago now. Karen: "Excuse me, I'm waiting here." Elliot whispering: "It's the 2-minute silence, miss." "I am in a rush. Just scan it so I can go." She was speaking super loudly, not quite shouting, but it sounded so loud in the otherwise silent shop. The other customers were glaring at her, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Elliot still whispering, "I can't. It's the 2-minute silence." "I don't care. I'm in a rush. Scan it now." Elliot looked almost in pain with how embarrassed and unsure of what to do he was. I quietly walked over and spoke to the woman, me whispering, "Miss, he will not scan you out until the 2-minute silence is over. You can either wait 1 minute or leave." Karen: "I don't give a crap about your 2-minute silence, whatever. I need to get to work and you will serve me right now." The last part of this was barked directly into Elliot's face, and he honestly looked like he was gonna cry. I whispered to Elliot to sign off his till and go take 5 in the break room, and I'd take over. Karen was not happy and shouted at him as he walked away. "No, he's got to serve me. Come back here." I get into position behind the till and wait for the last 30 or so seconds of the silence to finish. Karen: "For goodness sake, just scan it so I can go." I just ignored her until the sound went off again to signal the end of the 2 minutes, and the music began to play again. With the brightest customer service smile in place, I silently signed into the till and proceeded to complete the most painfully, glacially slow transaction I've ever done. I picked every item up and turned it all over, looking for the barcodes. Pretended some didn't scan, so I had to type in the 12-digit codes manually that I keep typing in wrong and having to start over. So clumsy. And scanning things twice, so I'd have to go through the void procedure every few seconds. Karen looked so annoyed. She scolded me for being so slow and so bad at my job. In the end, it took me about 5 minutes to complete the sale and send her on our way. If she hadn't been a complete toilet, she would have been out of there in 2. Please come watch this video next, you will love it. Join as a channel member today and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And come visit us on Fiverr to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to. Link pinned in the comments below.